Sheikh Saeed Raji. He's born in Somalia. He's studied abroad. He's been an imam in North America, United States, and in Canada. He's been in Western Canada. He's been in Eastern Canada. And he's currently the head of the Sakina Center. And without further delay, I want to get right into it because we have a lot of different things to discuss and talk about, which I believe are going to be very beneficial to the Muslim community. So I'd like to welcome Sheikh Said Raji. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. بارك الله فيكم. جزاك الله خير for having me over.
So, Sheikh, I just a few seconds ago, actually, I shared with you a picture, a blast from the past of a major conference that occurred in Calgary 16 years ago. And if we could have our producer put it up on the screen, inshallah. So this is a picture of myself, Sheikh Said Raji, and Hakeem the Dream Olajuwon, okay, two-time NBA champion, and Mamadou Najai. So there were two NBA basketball players. Alhamdulillah, a lot of youth came out to that event, and it was probably one of the biggest events, I would say, in Calgary. Like at that time, and even today, like many people remember that today. So do you remember that event, Sheikh?
Yeah, absolutely. I vividly remember everything, and as a matter of fact, I remember the background why, the reason why we brought those two people, mashallah, tabarakallah. Um,
Yes.
the city of Calgary at that time, when I went, first time I moved to Calgary was, I think, April 2013.
Mm.
It was very mild, city very calm. So we needed something that would attract the youth. If you remember, we had IISC, yeah, Islamic Information Society of Calgary, those days. Um, so
Yes.
we said, hey, why don't we bring somebody or some individuals that can really shake up the city and do something that would excite the youth. Um, it happened
Yes.
that I had a very good connection or relationship with Hakim Alajuan and Mamadou Anjay at that time. So I called them over. I said, why don't you guys come over? And if you remember,
Yes.
if you remember those days, we started something called MBA, Muslim Basketball Association.
Yes.
You remember those things? So we
Yes.
said,
I was
hey,
actually yeah, I think I played a few games in that in that
so
in that league. Yeah.
yeah, I remember. So we say, hey, Hakeem, why don't you come over? This is the first time in the
Yeah.
West Coast, on that side of the country, that we have NBA, Muslim NBA basketball. So he came over, and I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
we flew him first class, and he's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
guys, you guys doing better than actual NBA." I said, "Yeah, that's the
Well, I think he would have to come like first or business class. He's just too long. Like he's too tall
yeah,
to sit
oh yeah,
in. You know what I mean? Like I think just physically it would be impossible for him
true,
to fly an economy, right?
true, true. It was, yeah.
Yeah.
So but it was actually it was very very humbling experience, really. Why? Because the youth were
Mm,
able, they see these guys, the role model, guy who's playing basketball in the highest level, but yet he's fasting. He's not allowing champagne to be spread all over for a championship game and all that. And everybody, his own association, Houston Rockets, they had so much respect for him, so much
mm,
respect. I remember
mm,
we used to go to basketball here in Toronto when he was playing for the Raptors, and Vince Carter,
mm,
Shaquille O'Neal. When they come, if
mm,
Hakeem is there, they would just literally, they will.
mm.
I don't know if once Shaquille O'Neal, he came to say hi to Hakeem, and you see how much they respected him, really.
Yes. I find interesting his legacy because he was also an openly practicing Muslim in the NBA. And it seems like his experience or his effect has been different than, say, some of the other Muslims who are more controversial figures within the NBA. So he like he was openly fasting. He was obviously coming to Islamic conferences, so he's not hiding his Islam at all.
No.
But why do you feel he was received a little bit differently? Because, for example, he was not like Mahmoud Abdul Rauf, who was blackballed in the NBA, who was extremely talented. Like Mahmoud Abdul Rauf was very, very talented. So it was not a matter of talent, but it was more of him being politically ostracized. So what do you think is the difference that allowed Hakeem Olajuwon to not only be a champion, but also be able to represent himself as an openly practicing Muslim and not have that same type of blowback? What would you say? What would your analysis be?
Well, it's all about personalities, first of all, and understanding of Islam,
Mm,
second of all. Hakim understood from the beginning that I don't need to preach. I need to show. I need to show what Islam is. I need to practice. I need to tell these guys, I don't drink, I don't party, I don't have, side girlfriends. I don't gamble. When time for prayer, I pray. What time for fasting, I fast. I respect every and each one of you for what you believe and what you stand for. Therefore, I also, want you to give me the similar respect. Um, I remember Christmas time, they used to come and leave gifts, or people trying to give him a gift. But you know what he used to do during Eid time? Um, he used to send gift for every single member of his team, from the management, from the
mm,
player, from the janitors, everybody. He
wow.
would send them Eid gifts. So people
Mm,
love him for what he is. If you ever speak to Shaquille O'Neal, you know he would have nothing to say but praises about Hakim. Why? Because Hakim really showed what Islam is. He did not just preach.
mm,
He did not want to be controversial. Also, the background, Hakim, he personally told us when, I don't know, I hope he doesn't mind, but he said two African American came to me while I was practicing, all sweating and all this, and then they said to him, "Are you a Muslim?" And he said, "I got offended."
mm,
And I said, "Yes, I'm a Muslim." And then they said to him,
mm,
"Well, get ready, we're gonna pick you up for Jummah." He said, "I took it, to the bone. How could these people even ask me a
yeah.
question my Islam?" So he said, "I was ready for Jummah, for the next Jummah."
Mm,
And then as soon as they took
mm,
him to the masjid, they took him to the imam. And then
mm,
what he did, according to what he told us those days when he came to visit us, from that day, he sat under that imam. He learned Islam from one source. He wasn't a person, learning from whoever he hears. No, he was very balanced.
mm,
So he had,
mm,
guidance. He had someone to tell him what to do. He was also eager to learn Islam. So, but at the end of the day, it was him saying, "This is what Islam is. This is the beauty of Islam."
mm,
And,
mm,
a lot of people around him accepted Islam. And you remember that event, seven people came out of nowhere, accepted Islam. And
mm,
I don't know if you remember, Sayyid, like I said, there was a, Islamic school. There was
mm,
Islamic school. So we had an open court one night. And there was this Sudanese kid from South Sudan. And he was,
mm,
big, tall, and mashallah, he's like as tall as a Hakim. But he's wearing a cross, right?
mm,
When he came, he took it off and he
mm,
said, "Hakim, I'm a Muslim." He said, "But
mm,
my community, they were all Christians. So even though we were Muslim in South Sudan, but my father and my mother had to pretend that we're Christian, so we can fit in. And when we moved to Calgary, they still were the same community, and I wear a cross, not because I believe, but
mm,
all my friends are wearing it." But he took it off out of
mm,
respect for Hakim, and then he started learning
mm,
Islam slowly. So Hakim had that, people would gravitate towards him, and it was easy to talk to, and he never judged anybody. And maybe that's
mm,
why he was well received.
mm. Subhanallah, like I remember the when they won, the Houston Rockets won the championship. I actually watched those games, and when you watch your favorite NBA player, you try to recreate the moves, and he had that
Our
classic.
dream shake, the dream
Uh,
shake, man.
yeah. He had the shake, and then he'd go back, and yeah, the fadeaway jumper. He had
Yeah,
probably one of the best short range jumpers in the game,
yeah.
and so I remember when they did win that championship, and there wasn't this huge melee of like alcohol being sprayed
No,
around in the locker room, right?
no, no.
And seeing him in person and spending some time with him in person, definitely he was a very humble person. Here's a multimillionaire, right? Let's be frank. He's a multimillionaire. He's a superstar. He's well respected. Even now, his consulting fee, like NBA players go to him today. Professional NBA
Oh yeah,
players go to him
oh yeah.
today for training, and his consulting fee is hundreds of thousands of dollars. You know what I mean? So he still commands that high level of respect, and he has this, as you mentioned, through his actions, this effect on the rest of his players, his community, and so forth. And so, do you think then this is not an issue of like, okay, this way of da'wah is better than another? Because there's sometimes, for example, injustices where you want to speak out about, you want to use your platform to speak out for these injustices, and you want to make some noise, and it might cost you something. It might cost you like a paycheck. It might cost you like your career. So is it an issue of like, hey, we have people within our ummah who are willing to do this, and we need to respect that, and we have some other people in the ummah who are showing more from their actions. They're showing more soft diplomacy, but they complement each other. It's not an issue of like one being better than another.
As
What
you
would you say in
stated,
regards to that?
no, as you stated, see, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, He gave us, each one of us is loaded with talent, right? Each one of
Mm,
us is capable of doing something for the Deen. None of us can say I can't do anything for this Deen. But there are some of us like Hakim and Najwan who can really subtly, invite everybody to Islam without being, overprotective of their own faith. There are also those people who, they like to show, because again, non-Muslim, they're not one blueprint. They have a different personality, different background, different, understanding of their own faith and other faiths. But you also have someone like Zakir Naik, who say, okay, well, this is what Christianity say about God, this is what Hinduism said about God, this is what Islam said about God. And he has, that level of a scholarly level where he can present his fact in that matter. So each one of us is capable. يعني رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال كل مهيئ لما خلق له. Each one of us is, and Allah created for a purpose. Allah gave us the ability. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu, he was like Ibrahim alayhi salam. But Umar bin Khattab, he
mm,
was like Musa alayhi salam and Nuh. So everybody has a different personality. So you as a Muslim, you should know your capacity, your ability, and perform well. However, look at the da'wah of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Look at the approach of Rasulullah sallallahu. It was always subtle, calm da'wah. Yes, there was a time that you really need to stand up for your right and fight, whether it's a physical or verbal or on your with your pen. But most of his da'wah was just a subtle da'wah. Let the people see the beauty of Islam, and they themselves will judge it. They themselves will accept it. Remember the man. Rasulullah sallallahu, he was a very wise man. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah said in the Quran, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. He's the best example to follow. But remember, the messenger of Allah, he was standing between two mountains, and he was looking at the ghanam sadaqah, sheep that was collected for, for sadaqah. And then this Bedouin Arabi, he looked at all these sheep, and you can see him, and I can imagine that man literally drooling for this because he loved sheep. So the messenger of Allah, he looked at it, and the man said, Ya Muhammad, oh Muhammad, are all is yours? And the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, it is yours if you like. So the man, he
mm,
drove all the sheep away. Guess what he did? When he went back to his people, قال يا قومي, O my people, accept Islam. فوالله إن محمدا لا يعطي أعطاء من لا يخشى فقر. He say, give. I mean, go and accept Islam. Indeed, Muhammad, he gives like a man who have no fear of poverty. What I'm trying to tell you is, Rasulullah, he understood the personality of this person. So as a da'i, you should understand who you're talking to. Sometimes you need to be
mm,
stern and firm, and sometimes let
mm,
your subtle da'wah do the job. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, it seems like within our community, we want to be almost pigeonholed. Like we want to focus very narrowly on one thing, sometimes at the expense of disregarding many other aspects within our deen, that are just as beneficial or just as relevant. You know what I mean? So, for example, you might have somebody who just focuses on one area of da'wah, or they say, well, we just need to focus in on our community. Or it's like we got to be just politically active. So people become not necessarily specialists, but they become exclusionists. So they want to exclude the benefit of many other people. You know what I mean? Whether it's um, a person who has a certain area of knowledge, whether it's a person who has certain skill sets or whatever. And for me, I reflect upon like this type of attitude, coming from even shaitan, where he's just focusing on one thing. When he's not bowing to Ahmad alayhi salam, he's focusing on that one aspect. Oh, materially, I'm better than him. I'm made of fire. He's made out of clay. But the whole like it's I feel like the spirit of Islam is like, as Ahl Sunnah wa Jama'ah says, bring everything together, bring the people together, the Jama'ah, bring the Jama'ah of all the hadith and ayat of Quran before you make your ruling, right? So bring things in a more comprehensive way. So how can we avoid that? Because it just seems like, for example, you go to a masjid, or this masjid, they focus in on good relationships with non-Muslims, but they don't care about good relationships with Muslims. You know what I
Right.
mean? So how can we? Because you brought up some very important points here. Actually, how can we overcome that? How can we overcome this idea of becoming so exclusionary, just carving out this little section and saying this is what's important for myself and for the community?
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu udkhulu fi silmi kafa. So Islam
Mm,
is not something. Allah said, "Oh, who you believe, enter Islam as whole." You can't pick and choose. You can't say, "I'm gonna only do this. I'm gonna ignore this." Islam is a total religion. It's a total system of life or way of life. Um, every masjid, every community, every organization, every entity, they should have that understanding. Islam is bigger than their own little masjid, their own little organization, their own little community. However, I, as a person, I respect everybody. I respect those who wants to concentrate on the da'wah, general da'wah. I respect those who wants to concentrate in the political arena. I respect those who concentrate on education, all this. But I would say Islam is not only that. Islam is all of that. You can't just say, this is my way, and this is the only way you will go to Jannah is through this. Once upon a time, I was a
mm,
part of a Muslim group, and when I decided to, to step over that or out of that and be part of the greater Jama'ah, I remember the member of that community came to me and said, "If you leave, that means Allah has fired you from the job of being a da'iyah. Therefore, all your previous
mm,
deeds are rendered unaccepted, not accepted. Therefore, you're going to Jahannam upfront like that." But I think that is out of ignorance,
mm,
out of jahl. What I would say to the brothers and sisters who are listening to this, respect those who are doing certain job, and learn to accommodate, learn to understand all of us, doing good job. I'm doing good job by teaching. I'm doing good job by giving down on the street. I'm doing giving good job on, walking, going to visit the Muslims. I'm doing good job by, doing da'wah on what do you call with the non-Muslim. I'm doing good job. However, do not criticize anyone else. Now, Islam is like a pizza. We have, slices. You can't just take one little slice and magnify it and say this is Islam. That's not how it works. You know, everybody, the one who's doing jihad fi sabilillah, the one who's doing ilm fi sabilillah, the one who's working for siyasa, all of them should be equally respected, and they themselves should be should respect and understand that we have different talents, that where we're going into employ those talents and these talents for the sake of our deen and community.
Mm. So, some of the reasons perhaps we have also these divisions is that just logistically, like we have a limited number of people who are actually willing to put in the work, right? We have a limited number of money, resources. We have a limited number of time and all of these different things. So sometimes I think just logistically, it's almost like a competition of these resources, right? So then it brings people at odds, right? So logistically, and then there could be a spiritual component where there's not a meeting of the minds and the hearts. So what do you think's at play? Is it more of a logistical thing? Is it a spiritual thing, or do you think it's a combination of both?
Well, since you exposed me, and you know how long I've been in da'wah, I've been in this work for a very long time, and I've been into different levels. I've been in level of assistant imam, or just a da'wah coordinator, an
Mm,
assistant imam, an imam, a manager, or a president of an organization. So I've been to all levels. So I what I conclude is, and please, I don't want anybody to flip and say Saeed is calling us. But what I conclude is, most of these organizations and entities, um, they don't take this deen as a risala, as a mission. They don't take it
mm,
as, hey, my responsibility is, this is a responsibility. This is not a position. It's not something that I need to run and lobby so people can elect me as a president of this. This is not for that. This is a mission. In Arabic, we call it a risala. And that's why a risala to Rusul is a responsibility that you should carry. Right now, I've seen masajid fighting each other, and they, wallahi, some of them said, "You taking our musallin away from us," he said. Since when the Muslims
mm,
were customers, right? Why are we treating these people who come to worship Allah as customers? Why are we concentrating that, hey, if these people don't come to us, I won't get the donation that I need. And so if they go to you, that means you literally cut off my rizq, which is completely against what Islam stands for. Islam, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam never worry about money, never worry about time, never worry about it. He was worried about, is this mission going the right direction? Are these people accepting Islam? فلعلك باخع نفسك على آثارهم إن لم يؤمنوا بهذا الحديث أسفا. Allah saying, perhaps you're going to kill, Ya Muhammad, yourself after these people if they don't follow the deen of Allah. And Allah is saying, don't overdo, don't kill yourself. Don't feel sad, don't grieve, don't have anxiety because they turn away from the deen of Allah. So what I'm saying, these masajid, these organizations, these entities, our mission should be, how can we save these people, our own people, and the non-Muslims? How can we save them? How can we bring them to the light of Islam? How can we show them the beauty of Islam? Use any halal method that's possible. But the aim should be, my mission is for people to accept Islam, not for me to have the largest congregation, not for my conference to be the best and the most attended conference, not my this. No, that is the wrong idea. That
mm,
is where we all go wrong. Yeah, Dr. Sayyid. This is completely unacceptable. Um, but
mm,
so I would say, logistically and spiritually, we have both in both areas seriously. And I think we need to
mm,
overcome that. And that's when we overcome that. This is, if you remember when Ahl al-Ridda, when after the death of the Messenger of Allah, people, from Tihama and all this, they said, you know what? We used to give zakat to Rasulullah. He is now dead, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We're gonna pray. We're gonna come for Hajj. We're gonna, fast, but no zakat. Now, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq could have said, you know what? I'll take, 4 out of 5. Alhamdulillah. But he said a beautiful statement. قال أينقص الإسلام وأنا حي? He said, going to tell me that Islam is going to decrease in my lifetime? It's not gonna happen. And then he said, Wallahi, لو منعوني عقالا كانوا يدفعون أو يعطون لرسول لقاتلتهم عليه. Wallahi, if they deprive me or stop giving a rope, a piece of rope that they used to give to Rasulullah, I will fight for it. So you would understand that the mission of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq is not to have as many followers as as he can, not to please as
Mm,
many people as he can. His mission was, is
mm,
this being done? And when Umar bin
mm,
Khattab, not to take much of the time, when Umar bin Khattab came and he said, Ya Abu Bakr, we can't fight these people. And at the same time, you sending Usama bin Zayd to the north. We can. Why don't we wait? And everybody was standing outside of the house of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. And the only man that they consent to speak to Abu Bakr was Umar bin Khattab. And then what did Abu Bakr do? Who was very tiny, very skinny. And Umar bin Khattab, tabarakallah, was big. He grabbed him by the
mm,
shirt and he started waving him like a leaf. And he said, أجبار في الجاهلية خوار في الإسلام يا ابن الخطاب. He said, now you used to be
mm,
big and arrogant and strong at the time of Jahiliyyah, and you now whip and weak in Islam. Get out of my face. Some of the mu'arrikhin, they said, Umar bin Khattab walked out of that house crawling on his hands and knees. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. So the risala of al-Islam, the
mm,
complete mission of al-Islam should be things that we concentrate and focus on, akhi.
mm. It seems like the essence of what you're saying is that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum and the standard set by the Khulafa Rashidun was to take principle over popularity. And maybe
Yeah,
that's what leads us astray from the leadership perspective, from an awam, like a jama'ah perspective, like to take this to go for something that is popular or maybe something that is trending or to fight over resources maybe necessarily maybe that the solution for both spiritually and logistically is to come back to your principles, to what are the core principles of Islam
exactly.
and be united upon that. One thing that we fail to recognize when you have these divisions is the collateral damage. If you remember, back in your time in Alberta, there were two youth groups, right, that were kind of at odds with one another. And I'm just reflecting upon this, like, this situation 16 years ago or whatever. And I look at it today, and there was these divisions amongst these youth groups, and it was just I wouldn't say they weren't like significant divisions that required them to be at such odds with one another, but I feel the aftermath of that is very now 16. They were youth, they were young guys back then. None of them became prolific leaders within the community, like remain in the community. There was supposedly a youth group present investing in them and their development, and it's like 0% retention and return on your investment.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Do you
yeah,
see that? Do you see that as a like a as a systemic problem within our community that we
absolutely.
have these youth, like how many for how many years, like in front of us, being in Canada almost 20 years, people coming out of Islamic schools, right? You have all this generation year after year coming out of Islamic schools. You have people coming out of these Islamic youth groups. We should have leaders in our community. We should have leaders in other areas of society that reflect the interests of the Muslim community, right? So systemically, why don't we have that? Is that just a byproduct of us again not showing that leadership or showing any type of operational unity?
To belong to an entity, whether it's a masjid or youth group or even ethnic group, is not against Islam. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا. So we are قبائل, we have شعوب, we have nations, we have tribes. So it's perfectly acceptable. And the
Mm,
Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even at the time of war, he used to use that to benefit the Muslims. And he used to say, this is the banner of the Muhajirin, this is the banner of the Ansar, this is the banner of the Ummah. So there used to be three banners. And he used to say to the Ansar radiallahu anhu, make sure the enemies do not come through you. As so the Ansar would say, nobody will get to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam through us. And if you remember the story of Sa'ad bin Rabi', when the messenger of Allah in the battle of Uhud, قال من يأتيني بخبر سعد, who's going to bring me the news of Sa'ad? And one of the Sahaba said, Ya Rasulullah, I'll bring his news to you. And then he saw 70 of the Sahaba being killed, so many animals and horses being injured and killed, and nobody knows where is he. So he raised his voice. فقال يا سعد إن رسول الله, messenger of Allah, oh Sa'd, asking about you. So Sa'd bin Rabi', and this is the Sahabi from the Ansar, Sa'd bin Rabi', with the weak voice, قال ها أنا, I'm right here. So the man went to him and he said to Sa'd, and Sa'd's on the ground bleeding, he's on a pool of blood, and he said to Sa'd, Rasulullah is giving you his salam and he's asking you, how are you doing? So Sa'd bin Abi Rabi', he smiled and he said to him, tell him, wa alayka salam ya Rasulullah. Indeed, we found what you promised us. He's talking about, the Jannah and all this. He's dying. He's on his last moment. And then he said, وَقُلْ لِلْأَنصَارِ. This is what I'm trying to get. And tell the Ansar, لَا عُذْرَ لَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. You have no excuse in the sight of Allah if any harm gets to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. No excuse. So Rasulullah, he used that, Ansar and Muhajir and all this to benefit. Now, coming back to your, these groups, it's okay to have organization A and B and C. But the problem was we create youth groups to fight for us. We fuel them with the wrong intention. We
Mm,
label them labels and say, do better than their conference, have better event this,
mm,
no. They had 100 kids who came for a sleepover. Guess what? This time I want you to bring 200 youth, and I'll pay for the pizza, I'll pay for the biryani, I'll pay for the baris, whatever, just do it. So
mm,
we didn't create leaders, we create, ignorant soldiers. We were not
mm,
creating that youth to lead. We were creating soldiers to fight for us. And that is where we all went wrong. And I'm not talking about in Calgary. I'm talking about Calgary, Ottawa, New York City. We talk about, Buffalo. I'm talking about all around the Muslim world. I'm talking about London, UK. I'm talking about, Birmingham. So what we need to do as imams, as a da'is, as people who understood the mission of Islam, we need to make these young people, understand again the risala of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi
mm,
wasallam. And
mm,
that is why we have, as you said, we have, not only, I'll add to your list, not only that we have Islamic school, but we have so many young men who graduated from Islamic University. Where are they?
mm.
Where are they?
Yes.
Every year, I think right now, for Canada, we have almost over 100 students in University of Medina. 100, more than 100
Wow.
students. So when they come out, and they keep coming, by the way, they fall in the city of Toronto. Some of them Uber drivers, some of them, Quran teachers, some of them truck drivers, some of them, what happened to the leadership? So
Mm,
we need to go back and build the organization and build the youth from the foundation ala taqwa, not on a mission for them to fight for us.
mm.
Now,
Yes, that is true. There's when it comes to actual resources, we do have a significant amount of resources, whether it's knowledge, whether it is just even material resources within the community. Um, One thing that I noticed in the evolution of da'wah, which perhaps um, has affected proper coordination and leadership within our community, is some of the people who have, I would say, the knowledge and the ability to lead, either their talents are being wasted, we're not supporting them properly, or I also saw in 20 years an evolution of like a celebrity type of culture. So it's more about the perception of knowledge rather than the actual practice of knowledge. You know what I mean? So there was also this celebrity culture that came into view. So you would have very talented people, say, who could maybe teach within the community, learn, people can learn from them. But then it's now become like, okay, is this sheikh famous? Is this speaker famous? Can they draw the numbers? Do they have like a huge social media following, especially nowadays in the past few years. So how can we maybe address some of that as well? Utilize these untapped resources that we have within our community, and maybe give advice to leaders who have capability to help change this culture, because this culture does not, I would say, sustain principles. It's not something that is conducive for fostering principles. It's more, unstable. You could say this type of culture envisages instability within the community.
I endorse every single word that you say strongly. I really do. Unfortunately, we created a layer of da'is who only their concern is, how many likes, how many followers. I have this, I have, and I do sit with a lot of da'is, and I see them bragging about the number of followers that they have. What we need to, once again, I don't. There's a lot of way, Dr. Said, a lot of pain actually in the field of dawah. Um,
Hmm.
they see one of the biggest thing is I always say, and you may not like what I say, or some people may not like. If you really want to reform dawah, change the leaders of the masajid and change the imams. They are the worst two in the why. Now, as the moment that the imam takes this job of da'wah as an actual job, 9 to 5 job, or based on paycheck, then you really kill any ambition, any innovation in the imam himself, or he killed that in himself. And majority of the imam nowadays, that is the status. And I know some of them, they're going to be very pissed with me, but the reality is a lot of them, they don't want to uh, go against the status quo. They don't want to rock the boat. They say, well, we follow the administration, and this administrations, the administration, most of the administration really do not know anything about dawah. They don't know anything about Islam in terms of knowledge. And because of that, we have the imara and we have the ulama. Both of them are weak. I say, and no, this is my very, very, very humble opinion. I would say most of the immigrants, the da'is, the imams, the immigrant imams, they should have stepped aside. The people who were born and raised here, they should take the podium. They should lead. Number two,
Hmm.
the idea of the level, that celebrity, fever, or myth, that has to be removed from the dawah. Uh, I'll tell you something. My best dawah was in Calgary. My best dawah, personally, Saeed, was in Calgary. You know why? Because I used to go down to the level of the community. I used to play ball in a Millennium Park, if you remember. I used to play
Hmm.
ball with them until 2 a.m. Not that I was
Hmm.
homeless, that I didn't have home, but I knew that's where these kids are hanging. And I knew if I go and play with them, these girls will walk away, and these boys will
Hmm.
not smoke weed and drink alcohol. You know, you know. The problem is,
You
if
used to go
all,
hard in the paint, I remember.
hey, you know, if you want to do something, you
I
gotta
think
do
you
it
had
right.
special sheikh status. They would refrain from calling fouls on you. I think you had some special status there. I still remember, like, when the people like, how did you get away with this?
Uh, well,
Sorry, go ahead.
I wouldn't say that, but you know, well, but my point is, really,
Mm,
if you want to do our job as a da'i, we gotta go to that level. We want to change. We gotta change that.
mm,
And the idea of how many likes, how many Facebook followers, how many Twitter followers, how many, and that gotta stop. Unfortunately, Dr. Said, that we're missing a lot in our community. And the biggest thing, and I'd like to really redirect this conversation to something that was really bothering me, and that is the lack of communication amongst the leaders, lack of
mm,
unity, if you want to say, amongst the leaders. And every leader, every imam, every organization, they want to have their own little khilafah. They want to have their
Mm.
own little things, like little dawla. At the time of Ibn Taymiyyah, when the Tatar was attacking, or even at the time of when the Europeans started invading Muslim world, why did they defeat us? Because we have little khilafat, little duwaylat. And I think our
Mm.
masajid are doing exact the same thing right now. Our imams are doing the same thing. And the day that we overcome this this unity and we work together, that we can do something together. If I know Dr. Sayyid Iqbal and I can rely on him and he's doing his work and I'm doing, and he knows that I'm doing my work in Toronto, and we can link together in the clouds, we work together, then we can go somewhere. But if Brother Saidi says, this is Sakina, this is my domain, this is my khilafa, I'm the Amir, I'm the king, I'm the ruler, and everybody is my subject. And that is the problem that we have with the Muslim community. I know for fact that we're lacking that. And I deal with a lot of politicians. By the way, I became almost imam slash politician. It's not, you know, and
Yeah.
I
Are you
one of
running for mayor?
you know I think I will win if I run against John Touré this time. But
Yeah, you
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 know,
have a strong vote. I think you have a strong community there that'll get you in.
my point is, we can't change the
Mm.
condition of the ummah unless first we unite. إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم. So we need to. The change has to come from us. Iqbal. I mean, Sayyid, I'm sorry.
Mm. Yeah,
Um,
I agree because I think like as you mentioned, amongst even the leaders, like to at least have a source of two things. One is support. Say, for example, if one of our imams, one of our speakers is singled out, they have support from the community. We should be able to support them. And on the other hand, having speaker or sorry, the ulama or the leaders united, they can also admonish one another. Like we're so fragile sometimes. It's like you just want to be told how right you are. You don't want to be told, "Hey, listen, you've made a mistake." So actually, both of those things we should seek. We should seek admonishment and we should seek support in one another. And I think that's the essence of a deen and nasiha. What would you say?
Number one, if I hear you correctly, you said the imams in the local community, they have support, which I don't
No, I say they
think.
should. No,
Oh,
I
they
what I'm
should.
saying
I
is
agree. I agree.
that if we as imams and du'at and leaders unite, like like at least on that level, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
on the level
Yeah.
of leadership, then that can serve as both a source of support and a source of admonishment, a way of checking yourself, so that if you do
Exactly.
make mistakes, you have people that you trust that can tell you, hey, you screwed up, you need to fix this up. You know what I mean? Or if you do something that you have support, like, okay, I'm saying the truth, I want to stand up for the haqq, and I know I'm going to have brothers and sisters who's going to have my back.
Well, I'll tell you something. 100% or 99%, the imams, they don't have support, not from the community, not from the leadership, not from a collective imams of different parts of the world.
Mm.
If I say something today that I think is correct and is based on the Sharia and the Sunnah, and I think I use the ultimate hikmah, um, the best that I can get, the best support that I may get is when someone sees me in a private place, they say, good job, or that you were right. So if
Mm.
you say something, nobody's going to come out for your aid. Nobody's going to come after you. So a lot of imams, they withdraw from the community and they say, you know what? I'm just going to do my job, because tomorrow, if something happens to me, nobody's going to come after me. I remember the days that I was in Calgary. One of the imams said something. He quoted hadith in the Sahih al-Bukhari. And and then the first people, of course, the media got on that hadith and the khutbah, and then it became, a headline. The first people who attacked that imam
Mm.
was so-called Muslim organization. The first people who
Mm.
said, we have nothing to do with this. were the Muslim community leaders. And I remember
mm.
um, the what was it, Calgary Hurdle was it something? One of the
Harold,
newspaper,
yes.
Herald, yeah, one of that newspaper, the reporter came to the leaders in Calgary at that time, and they said, "What do you think what this imam said?" And they were like, "Oh, he's a radical. He is this. He's Wahhabi," and they threw him under the bus. So that lady, she
Mm,
just went, and so she said, "So everything he said is not Islamic. No, it's out of Islam." And she just went
mm,
Sahih al-Bukhari, and she published her article saying who's lying, their Bukhari or their leaders, right? So
mm,
nowadays, if an imam says something, or if he takes a stand for the sake
mm,
of, let us say, Muslims, for the sake of hijab, for the sake of, no one will ever come after that imam. Let me tell you something that person happened to me. I don't know if you're aware of. When I came here to the city of Toronto, I gave a khutbah, and the khutbah was, if you remember this man by the name Tariq Fatah. Tariq Fatah
yes.
wrote an official letter to Stephen Harper saying that niqab should be banned. Niqab should be banned.
Mm,
So I simply got on the member. Civilly, I spoke to to the community. I said, listen, we have 750 people sitting here. I print out what to say to this man and how to approach. And I say, listen, go and call the so-called organization by the name Muslim Congress, I think Canadian Muslim Congress, and tell them, please do not speak on behalf of Muslims because this is against our Islam. And this is a country called Canada, and everybody is has the ultimate freedom to dress the way they like. And I mentioned
mm,
an incident, if you remember, maybe you don't remember, but there was an incident where a young lady, I believe, in somewhere in Ontario, London, Ontario, Kitchener, she fought the court, the Supreme Court, saying that I want to be topless. Summertime, it's hot for me to wear a
mm,
bra. Men
yes.
are allowed to be topless. I want to be topless. So I used the analogy
Mm,
and said, look, she went and she won the case. Now, Tariq Fatah
mm,
cannot come to us and say niqab should be banned by Stephen Harper. Now,
mm,
Tariq Fatah, he was working for Global and Mail, I believe. So he was writing on the column. So they wrote an article about me saying preacher of hate. And Tariq Fatah, he said, when Sa'id was saying, Inna alhamdulillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inu wa nastaghfiruh, he was cursing the Christians and the Jews, right? This is the Arabic
mm,
part. He was cursing the Arabic. And of course, we rebel. I mean, we replied to that, and we went to the media conference, and we did what we need to do. But the point that I'm trying to make, guess how many imams spoke about the subject? How many imams said, this is what he said is true. If you want to be topless, that's your choice, as Imam Sa'id said. If you want to wear niqab, this is the only person who spoke about this was the what do you call the prime minister's house, the prime minister's house. They wrote and they issue a verdict saying we're not gonna get involved with the dress code of our Canadians, right? But let
mm,
me ask you, how many imams stood up with me? How many imams said, our sisters,
yeah.
they none. So imams, they don't have support from their community, and the imams,
Mm,
they do not support each other. And I can tell you, every imam in the city of Toronto, the media came after them one after another. A hate group came after them. Nobody stood up for them. So the problem is
mm,
we are not willing to stand with each other. We're not with other
mm,
other communities where they stand up. Okay, you're wrong. I can admonish you, secretly. Let us say, as you said, yes, you guys
mm,
should be as an imam, for example, of the imam community, of the imam society. I'm sorry, you should hold me responsible. Say,
mm,
brother Saeed, how can you say this? You entitled without
mm,
exposing me to the public, to the ignorant people. But the problem with our
mm,
community is we're not willing to stand up together. Let me give you another example. I
mm,
found eight people that the passport office held their passports. and they
Mm,
said we gotta do second screening, and the third screening, different level of screening. So I said to listen, why don't we come together? Why don't we all eight you guys come together? Let us address this issue as a community. And then they will respond. No one wants to come up. So
mm,
we are so defeated internally. If I
mm,
see you being dragged, if I see you, wallahi, you spoke for the sake of Islam, you spoke for the sake of your community, you spoke for what you think is right, and I see you them dragging, see you dragging, I the way we acting right now, I'm not gonna speak about what happened to you. And
mm,
exactly, remember at the time of Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, they said, some of the ulama I read somewhere, that the Tatar, that a woman would come and she said, "Hey, Muslim men, stand right there. I forgot my sword. Wait, don't leave."
mm,
And they will stand there until she goes to her house, bring a sword, kill 10 men after another. And everybody is waiting for. And if you ask number 10, yeah, you saw number one being killed, number two being killed. Why didn't you run? How come you didn't run? How come you didn't
mm,
even defend yourself? He will say, I was hoping that she would get tired by the time she gets to me. You know. Same thing here. The mentality is like, okay, now they drag Saeed, now they drag in Sayyid ibn Iqbal. They will never come to me. And
mm.
that is the ultimate defeat. So if the imams and the leaders of the community acting like this, who's going to stand up for Islam?
Yes. It's and I think people fail to appreciate how we set ourselves up for victimization, because
Yeah,
we when we don't have this confidence, when we don't have self-confidence and respect and self-esteem for our own self, our own roots, our own history, our own people, then we can be easily exploited. When you look at these issues, these are fundamental human rights issues. But what happens is, because we're so weak in terms of our own self worth, that it becomes now a cultural issue which we have no say in. So
exactly.
to give you like an example that we can see in our current events, it shows a lack of critical thinking, a lack of you could say self-confidence, is that they allowed now salawat and ayah sophia. So they allowed it to become a masjid again. Okay, now when people look at this, they fit like, you see a segment of Muslims saying, oh, this is horrible that they're allowing, that they're doing this, that they're reverting it to a masjid. This is like intolerance, all of this stuff, right? Yet they don't look at the historical context. That was part of like an anti-Islam, systemic policies that were implemented in Turkey. When they converted it to a museum, that was just one policy out of them banning the adhan in Arabic, banning teaching of Quran. They were banning, hijab in institutions. How many sisters for decades suffered brutal oppression? They were jailed. I still have the articles to this day. I remember when we were trying to spread awareness of this in the late 90s, of sisters who, when they would come from abroad, if they were wearing hijab, they would be interrogated for hours. If they
Yeah,
tried to go into the university, I still have pictures of these sisters getting beaten up. Okay, so when that was instituted, Hagia Sophia was turned from a masjid into a museum. That was part of an Islamophobic campaign to oppress anyone who wanted to practice their religion. And no, 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 let's not reflect that. Let's now, no, no, we're the ones who are the oppressors. Oh, no, they're, yet, if you look at the policy, it says Muslims and non Muslims are welcome. Actually, if you go to the Blue Masjid, which is already a masjid that, non Muslims and both Muslims, they go and visit, it's just what they do is they make a certain section, a musalla, where people can pray. That's literally the only difference. And it's open to everyone. They're not saying any non-Muslim is barred from coming in, right? Yet
right.
you have Muslims now who are attacking this and saying this is intolerant, and all of these different types of issues. So if an imam says something that is, hey, listen, this is from our religion, They'll say, "Oh no, this is intolerant," when it has nothing to do with human rights, infringing on anybody's, freedom to choose whatever they want to do. But just because this is our identity, no, you as Muslim don't even have the right to talk in public discourse what your value system is. It's like you do not even have the right to do that. We have to always be on the defensive and explain our position from a defensive position. So, how can we get this confidence back within our community? Because it's like, when uh, you need people who have this courageous heart to strengthen one another. You know what I mean? If we just keep cutting and running from one another, eventually it's going to come to you. The hammer is going to come to you. You know what I mean? But people, I think just that low self-esteem that we're willing to accept this type of humiliation on that level.
Uh, it's a disease. It's actually a disease. When you cannot stand up for your rights, and you want someone else to deliver it to you on a golden plate, and you always play the victim. You always and you allow yourself to be victimized. It's a disease. It's a sickness. I mean, who's gonna give you a right on a golden plate? Who's gonna deliver your rights to you on a golden plate? Nobody. Nobody.
Mm,
Um, one of the events, we invited we invited the mayor of the city to speak on behalf of a Muslim issue that was very, very touchy. And I lost it. You know why I lost it? Because we're sitting with this man as an imam, and he's a politician. I mean, he will say
mm,
and do whatever it takes to be elected. And you, as a Muslim, you should dictate and ask him what he can do for us. I had enough. Everyone who speaks to address this man was praising him. And then they conclude by saying, how can we serve you? That's when I lost it.
mm,
I said, you call the guy because your own entities and organizations has been literally victimized. And now you're saying to this man, and he's sitting there, you're saying, how can we serve you? See,
mm.
playing
He's
weak.
supposed to serve
And
them. He's supposed to represent
but
them.
the most pathetic thing is when we see someone in power, we melt, we lose ourselves in him or her. We don't we You forget every right that you have for over him, and you just want to serve him. And that is, by the way, 90% comes from the imams who were raised outside of Western countries. 90%. Because
Mm,
system over there is it trained them to be humble and to serve. Where, like, look,
mm,
the Sahaba, look at the Tabi'een, Atta bin Abi Rabah, who one of the Mu'arrikhin, he said, he was not a very attractive man. He was not a rich man. He was not, but he was sitting next to the Khalifa because Khalifa wants him to sit next to him. And then he would address with strength, with confidence. And he said, you need to help the Mujahideen on the borders. You need to serve the grandchildren of the Sahaba. You need to take care of the people of Medina. You need to do this. You need to do that. And then, the Amir will get up, or I mean, will say, yes, kama amart, kama amart, to the point that Atta bin Abi Rabah, the Amir said, wama hajatuka, what can I do for you? Say, nothing. I don't want anything from you. I don't want anything from you.
mm,
Serve the people. You know,
mm,
Muslim imams here, Muslim leaders, they are so submissive to the authorities, to the leaders. When you expect them to
mm,
speak on your behalf, they praise the man who's abusing you and transgressing against your rights and all that. So what we need as a Muslim leaders, forget about yourself. Because when I praise you as a governor or as a prime minister or whatever, it means I want to leave something for me in your heart. I'm trying to please you.
mm,
Perhaps next time that And that's exactly what
Yes.
this man was doing. He's like, oh, I know so and so, he's very good. And they, just because this mayor praised this person started having wings, like you see Jibril alayhi salatu wasalam is about to fly out of his
Mm,
chair because this mayor or this person. And but that's the sickening. If you
mm,
really are imam, if you really a leader, if you really da'iyah, fight for your community, fight for your ummah,
mm,
fight for your youth, fight. You have to understand. I always say, me, if anybody is in my position, I have three handicap issues that I have to deal with in the social system. I'm
okay.
black,
Mm,
I'm an immigrant, I'm a Muslim.
mm,
All of those are three things that this society don't want to give their rights.
mm,
Even when you go, I respect what Black Lives Matter do, what Life Matters do for blacks, but you are not included. A sister with hijab is not
mm,
included because you're oppressed not because of your color. You're oppressed because of your faith. You're oppressed because you came
mm,
here, as an immigrant. But we are not. We don't understand. Hey, the day that they accept you as a Canadian, you have the rights of a Canadian, even though they may not give it all to you, but you can ask for
mm,
it. You can
yes.
ask for it. So these people, they think because they were giving the citizenship and they were giving, they should be grateful to them, humble themselves, serve them instead of serving and working for the community. And that is what the illness is. So I always
Mm,
say, if you want this community to change the imams and change the presidents and the leaders of your community, of the masajid, then
mm,
perhaps, you know,
yes. And I think anyone who immigrates to this country should be proud of how they came to this country because you didn't come as a conqueror. You didn't come oppressing anybody. You came to
no,
serve. You came to help benefit society. I don't see anybody who comes to this country saying that I'm here to exploit this or take over people, right? Like that's maybe how this country started in the first place, but that's not how immigrants come. They should be
no,
absolutely they should have a comfort and a pride of how I came. I came in a very respect. I respected the people when I came, to this country. But unfortunately, as you've mentioned, I think that mentality does come from our old world. I think it is remnants and shackles of colonization because we've been so used to being oppressed for so long that it has had these scars, these psychological scars that our community continues to deal with. The most similar situation that sometimes I go to within the Quran is if you look at the Bani Israel, the people of Musa alayhi salam. So
alayhi
Musa
salam.
alayhi salam is standing up for a man that's being oppressed, and he's selling him out the next day. He's literally selling. He's like, "Are you gonna kill me just like you killed him? I just saved you yesterday." You know what I mean? And that oppressed mentality, that victim mentality, stayed with them. Okay, now it's time for you to go and take Jerusalem. Oh no, we can't do that. You go, and you take care of it. We're gonna be sitting right here. This whole idea, this psychological effect. I do agree with you that it comes from this immigrant mentality.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, I think even some of the people who are born and brought up here, they don't some of them do have the confidence, some of them don't. But I one thing I would say that we can benefit from, because when I look at people who are immigrants to this country or people who are born and raised, I feel they have complementary traits. So one of the things that I see from people who do come, for example, is they do have a sense of like akhlaq and adab and etiquettes. You know what I mean? Like knowing how to treat elders, or at least people of ilm and things like that. They emphasize that more a little bit just because of that environment that they have come from. Sometimes they're a little bit more, I guess, conservative when it comes to like intergender relations. You understand what I'm saying? So they do have some natural things that I think we can really appreciate, like from that immigrant generation. But there's also that other baggage that comes along with it, right? Like the maybe some of the more cultural aspects of Islam being practiced, some of the more nationalistic, not really having necessarily the confidence to stand up for justice. I remember a brother who was very well educated. He was a head of a university department. Okay, and he still feared Gaddafi. He was still, and he had been in Canada for decades, for decades. And subhanallah, people like I feel like because we don't take the mic and we don't speak for ourselves, the media really we get hit from both sides. Like think about this, Sheikh. You people have come from these dictatorships and they've been abused. Then
Yeah.
they come here and then they're held responsible. Oh, we have this liberal standard of what a just society should be like. Everything we see wrong in the Muslim world is your fault. And so it's like I have to explain everything that goes on in my country of origin, and I just escaped being bullied there. So now it's like you're being bullied from two sides. Do you know what I mean? So I think psychologically, you find many Muslims between this rock and a hard place, and that could maybe explain a little bit of why we behave the way that we do sometimes. What would you say?
Habibi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَا تَبْخَسُ النَّاسَ أَشْيَاءَهُم. Do not belittle people and do not, undercut their rights. I'm not
Mm,
talking about akhlaq. Like by far, people
mm,
who came back home, they do have a lot of akhlaq, a lot of manners, a lot of courtesy, a lot of the culture was Islamic, even though they were not practicing Islam, but the culture was Islam. Um,
mm,
but because you're good at one thing doesn't mean you're good at other things. If you
mm,
remember Hadith of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said to one of the Sahaba, he said, "Ya Rasulullah, you appointed so and so, and you appointed so and so, and you appointed so and so. What about me?" So the Messenger of Allah, this was Abu Darda, he said, "I love you for the sake of Allah, but don't you ever rule between two people. You have weak personality." This is a Sahabi, but this Sahabi,
mm,
at the same time, he was the alim of the Ummah. He was an alim. He was the mufti. Abu Darda was a mufti even
mm,
after the death of the Messenger of Allah. We're not talking about this. We're not talking about the
mm,
oppression that took place over there. They overcome all the oppression and obstacles that they were dealing with back home. How come they're very successful business people here? How come they have
mm,
very good professions? They are doctors and engineers, technicians, all this. How come they're doing well in every other field that relates to dunya? But the only field that we need them to be, proactive, we are not. Now they are suppressed and they have
mm,
nightmares and they have, I know. What I'm saying is like, يعني Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, بل الإنسان على نفسه بصيرة ولو ألقى معاذيره. Allah said, you know yourself, though you may explicitly, utter excuses. You know yourself. I may say, well, brother, Sayyid, I came late because of this, but Allah knows why I came late. And Allah is telling me,
mm,
you also know why you came late. So, بل الإنسان,
mm,
what I'm saying to these people, Alhamdulillah, you did a wonderful job. A lot of our, uncles and fathers and mothers, they build a masajid, they build Islamic centers. We appreciate that. I take my hats off for those people. But when it comes to leadership that we need today in the West,
mm,
they're not fit for it. Look in Arabic they say لكل مقام مقال. For every position, there's a statement. يعني in every situation, there's
mm,
a statement. Ibn Taymiyyah used to say لكل عصر عدولة ولكل قعد عدولة. He said for every generation it has their own men. For every generation, you know, maybe they were good for building masajid and Islamic schools and so on. Jazahum Allah khair. Maybe they are good and
mm,
they definitely were good. Maybe they are good in, teaching us the manners and akhlaq. Excellent. May Allah reward you. Yeah. But in terms of speaking to the system, we have a system that is, embedded with racism. There's a system that breathes racism, system that the veins of that system is nothing but a pure, discrimination. If you don't know that, step aside. Let somebody else do the job. Allow these
mm,
young people who are not afraid of this, who are not oppressed, or who are not being oppressed by other systems, who knows how to deal with this. Give them the chance. Allow them to shine.
mm,
You did your time. We became like we were complaining about Gaddafi. We were complaining about what called Saddam. We have so many Gaddafis here. We have so many Saddams here. Why
yes.
are we complaining about them? You know, I have some. I
Mm,
know some of the people. He was the president. They're the president of the Imams over 25 years. What that in the 25 years, the president of the Imam? Why am I complaining about Gaddafi then? I should not. So the
mm,
point is, I don't think the Imams who are educated back home or educated, they understand. They can do the job. I don't. I don't. You
mm,
know, right now we have the movement that happened to George Floyd, and what happened, and
yes.
I asked the imams. I said, "Hey, why don't we do this? Why don't you give me 30 seconds of your time saying we've been also oppressed. We
Mm,
deal with systematic racism day and night. You know, say something and let us compile. Let's put
mm,
5-10 minutes, and send it through the media and let the government, let the federal government know how we feel." You know how many
mm,
people agree?
mm.
Zero. The best
That's probably like
response.
the most non-controversial request you could ever make.
The best response I got, it
Yeah,
was, "Why don't you do it, and then we'll take a look at it."
yeah.
What is like?
Why don't you go fight
Why
with
don't
your
you
Lord? We're
go
sitting right here.
exactly? اذهب
We're
أنت وربك
قاعدون. Right.
فقاتل إنها هنا قاعدون. So the idea of, hey, you know, why don't we do this? Well, like, you know,
Yeah.
I tell the community. I said, listen, especially the Somali community will always complain that the police is not doing anything about Somali youth got killed, and there's a violence, there's a drugs, there's weapons, uh, you know, I said, hey, well, why don't we, it's just a crazy idea, entertain it. Why don't we do like the Tamil community did? I said, what did they do? I said, guess what? They all came together and said, guess what? We're gonna go 8 o'clock, 6 o'clock a.m. We're gonna block the gardener, and we won't allow anybody to come into downtown of Toronto.
Mm,
Guess what happened?
mm,
From that day, the police eliminated all the weapons. No more, Tamil tiger gangsters. No more. So I said to Somali community, why don't we do this? Why don't we go there? You know,
mm,
the idea of you can do something for yourself, it's far, far, far away. So what I should
mm,
complain and complain, but no, there's a time for that, and there's a time for this. One
mm,
of the professors, he came to me when I was imam at one of the masajid. I will never forget this. And he said, "Do you know how education system it works against your own people?" I said, "No." He
mm,
said, "Do you know why your students always go to special classes, apply? You know why they?" And he explained to me how the system discriminates against him, and I got all
mm,
fed up. I mean, you should have seen
mm.
me that Somali, Somali with banana and
Yeah.
barista. I can go just like that. I went crazy. I said, "What?
Yeah.
What?" I said, "What do you want?" He said, "You guys should come out. You should come out."
Mm,
And he's been professor at York University for 30 years. I said, "How many
mm,
people do you need? How many people?"
mm, mm,
He said, "As many as you can bring." I said, "How about 5,000 Muslims?"
mm.
He sat back and he said, "Saeed, Imam Saeed, if you can bring me 5,000 people, you can change the prime minister. You can remove the prime minister." In the city of Toronto, we have 750,000 Muslims. You
Yeah.
cannot bring a 2,000, 5,000 Muslims together. Why? Because the leaders of the community, they themselves, they not aware of the severity of the situation. Your children been discriminated. Your daughter's been discriminated. You don't understand. I see you, mashallah, you became a doctor since 16 years. I don't know what kind of a doctor you are, but you know, but I have a sister who said, I want to go, she would become a medical doctor. And she said, I wanted to go this field, but they would not let me. But my classmate who was from certain faith, she was accepted just like that. And she had worse mark than me.
Yeah.
Because there's a system there. There's a discrimination there.
Yeah.
They are,
Yeah.
and I said, you guys don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do for our community to wake up and smell the coffee, as they say.
People don't realize how deep it goes, like the discrimination and how the system is there to filter in people. I actually sat when we do interviews. So there, you have like a student there, you have like somebody from faculty, and then you would sometimes maybe have a person from the community, but most likely it's another faculty member, or maybe like it would be from the community, right? So they would bring it in, and it's supposed to be an impartial thing. You make your grades, right? And you know how many times a person comes in, and then one of the senior, usually white guy, he's gonna say like, he's a senior faculty. He says, "We're gonna let this person in. We're not gonna let this other person in." And everybody has to like go along with what that person's decision is. So, for example, and I'm not kidding. I'm not exaggerating whatsoever. I had a colleague of mine sit in one of the committee, and he said a very like beautiful white girl came in. That particular professor, faculty member said, she's really good looking. Let's bring her. She's coming into this program. This is how blatant it is. This is how blatant it is. We don't. People don't understand what like goes on behind the curtain.
No,
And
they don't.
the fact is that uh, these things allow, like I know a sister who wore hijab, she had top marks, and for years she couldn't get into the program. And the first time she applied to medicine, she got into medicine. How is that? Like within the first, she had top marks, but because she wore hijab, she's obviously being racialized there. But our
Of course.
community, are we going to be able to stand up? Is the whole community going to be able to stand up for her and say, listen, there's something fishy that's going on here? Show us your statistics. Show us how you operate. I saw this like in front of myself, like one of instructors, his son was in the class, and he is allowed to grade his son. And his son would literally, there's a lineup of people going there to check their work. The son would be, hey, Dad, can you check my thing? He just jumps over the whole line, gets his thing checked. You know what I mean? I saw this systemically, Sheikh, like happen. And yet, we're only going to allow ourselves to be exploited when we allow the system to prevail without us standing up for our rights. Because what I find happens is that now the individual Muslims who come into the system, they come into it and they realize, hey, for me to succeed, I have to put away any of my like voice for myself to stand up for. I have to take away any of my sense of self-worth if I'm going to make it here, right? So it's almost like they are training themselves. I'm going to be a servant of your system, because when they come out the other end, they are not maybe as likely to now change it for people who come after them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like there was some policies like that they had against Muslims in the school that I was in, and they asked me, why are you making such a big deal of this issue when we have had Muslims who've come through this program and not one of them has ever said that there's anything wrong with what we're doing? You understand what I'm
Sorry.
saying, Sheikh? I
Yeah,
was the
yeah,
first one. I was the first one in that faculty to make an issue for Jum'ah. Okay, so the history of that faculty, no Muslim who came in there made any type of issue for Jum'ah Salah. And then you know what? Guess what? Because I made an issue and it was a whole thing, Muslims afterwards came and they commended me. It's like, you know what? Because of what you did, we're able to pray Jummah now without having to suffer consequences, right?
It's like, thank you.
So yeah, so okay, you're welcome. You know what I mean? But subhanallah, like that is not how it usually operates. So as you mentioned, we have Muslims that are doctors, we have Muslims that are lawyers, engineers, business owners. But I feel that even though we've accomplished a lot, that's not being leveraged to uplift our community. We're not adequately leveraging all these accomplishments to uplift, the people who are coming after us. You know.
I don't know what to do, Akh Kareem. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, this a very somebody that I know. I've been working with him almost 3 years. He's a retired politician, and he was telling me about, why this group succeeded, why this group succeeded, why this group succeeded, and I keep saying no, 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 no. And he said they have two things that you people don't have, and and he said, by the way, this politician, he came with me to many imams meeting. He came to me with me to the many massages to address to address awareness in a certain issue. And he said all the groups that I mentioned, they have two things that your brothers don't have and sisters. I said, what are they? He said unity and a vision.
Mm,
They're not united, and they don't know what they're going. He said these people, they have unity, and they know exactly what they want. You guys don't know what you want. And everybody is for
mm,
himself. Every one of you is for himself, you know. And that's the problem of the ummah. Every masjid is for themselves. Every community is for themselves, you know. And, and we need to understand, if you want to live in the West or you live in non-Muslim country, you can't not live like that. You can't. You cannot afford
mm,
to live like that. Period.
mm. Are there any, like you would say, community specific issues that are characteristic to the Somali community? Are there things that they're particularly dealing with, or challenges that that community specifically is dealing with?
Somali community, when they came, and I'm not saying this because I'm Somali, for Somali community when they came, especially Ontario, they really changed the face of Dawah. When
Mm,
they came, they did not come as individuals; they came by thousands. And they were
mm,
able to congregate in a certain area. They were able to dress or show the dress code, Islamic dress code, jilbab, and niqab, abaya, where everybody
mm,
else was like, "Whoa, what are these people? I've never seen jilbab that big. I've never seen niqab that long." So they did
mm,
well in that aspect. The Masaj Somali community are people of the Masaj. They always want to pray in the Masaj. Every masjid that you go,
mm,
if the Imam is not Somali, the congregation is Somali. You know,
mm,
but there's a problem, and the problem was that generation and the new generation. There's a huge disconnect. There is
mm,
no connection between these two, and because of that, they went two different directions. The younger generation right now are going, mainly boys. The girls are doing much better, but mainly boys, they're going a completely off the grid, as they said, completely
mm,
uh, unchanted area or in the territories. So parents really don't know how to deal with them. Yes, they look like Somalis. They may speak, berries, basto, moose, banana, things like that, hilib, but they really don't speak the whole language. So
mm,
they look like Somalis. They may talk like Somalis. But they not Somalis in a lot of characteristics, like behavior, manners, understanding
mm,
of the culture, and so on. So that is a disconnect in that area that they need to come back and need to connect with them. Right now,
mm,
it is pandemic. The pandemic among the Muslim youth is majority of educated youth do not practice Islam. That's a problem. I don't know if
Mm.
you've seen some of the studies have been done in 2014, 2017, 2018 that shows more for 24% of the Muslim youth are leaving Islam. That's a serious issue.
Mm.
So, as a Muslim community in general, our youth are no longer. You yourself remember how
Mm.
halaqat, the youth used to be in the halaqat, camps that you used to do, how, camp sunnah,
Yes.
leadership camp, all of these camps they used to do, sleep over. The night that we have a sleep over, we used to go to Southwest Masjid, it used to be packed. ISC was never in. It's not the same. It's not the
You're right.
same.
You're right.
Things
You're
are
absolutely
changing.
right.
So children, youth are drifting away from Islam, and because of the celebrity Islam, uh, Islam became something, just a little glimpse. Oh, I listened to this. Oh, I heard this little clip. Oh, I had, this 30-second TikTok or 10-second TikTok. Or, that's what
Mm.
Islam is. So in the way the
Mm.
direction that we're going, we need to revisit the reality of the whole concept of da'wah amongst the youth and for the youth. Really,
Mm.
really.
Mm. Why do you think there's such a disconnect between these two generations? Myself, what I saw was I saw like, for example, talking to some of the elders, and what one of them, some of them would say is like, we work like such long hours, we barely see or speak with our kids. So is that like a major thing, or is that just one part of the reason why that there's such a disconnect between these two generations?
Number one, there's a difference between tarbiyah and ta'lim. So what we give our children is ta'lim, not tarbiyah.
Mm,
Ta'lim is like you take your kid to the Quran school and they learn alif ba ta qaida nuraniya, they memorize few just that's ta'lim. That's learning.
mm, mm,
Tarbiyah is showing them how to live Islam. And if the
mm,
parents is busy because of work or because of their social circle, if they busy and they trusting the Islamic school, trusting the Quran school, they only giving them ta'lim, they're not giving them tarbiyah. When the child reaches
mm,
certain age, they will drift away from, whatever authority that they learn, whatever authority that they would just drift away from that and they do their own things. The disconnect also is we try to raise these children the way we were raised. Like nobody ever, and I'm telling about Brother Saeed, nobody ever told me to do
mm,
my homework or to pray,
mm,
but I was doing it. Astaghfirullah.
mm,
Once my brother was extremely upset and he said, "Go to your room and do something like your homework." That was I still remember
mm.
one time in his entire life.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And nowadays, the kids are here, they're different.
Mm,
Their mindsets are completely different. You got to tell your kid to, brush his teeth. Have you ever, I don't know, but you got to tell your kids who are 16, 17 years, baby, did you brush your teeth this morning? Uh, 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 yeah, your socks clean, so they are
yeah.
different level. They may be very savvy in computers and electronics and things like that, but they in the different skill set they may not be like that. So there's a disconnect. Parents assuming like Saeed, okay, food was on the table, he has clothes over his shoulder, so he's good to go. We'll do the same thing here with these kids, and I will raise them the way I was raised. So, and that's not the case. Ali bin Abi Talib used to say, "Don't raise your children the way you were raised. فَإِنَّ لَهُمْ They have that. You have that your time, and they have their time. So we have to be
Mm,
careful how we raise our children and understand the change of time and how things are
mm,
affecting them as well. Now,
mm,
this major disconnect is that expectation as well. I'm expecting my
mm,
son to be this, and to be that. Now, there are certain communities that escape that. Indians, for example,
mm,
Muslim Indians and Pakistanis, and especially Indians, they escape that for many reasons. One, um, Indians, they lived as a minority. They were living with non-Muslims in their own country. So that
mm,
idea of, okay, you die Muslim, you live as Muslim, I bury you as a Muslim, you Muslim. So that was in their forefathers and it will be in them. Whereas a Somali kid, we didn't even have a different madhab, let alone different religion.
mm,
So my father, he would not even know what madhab I follow because we were only one madhab. So the experience
mm,
also is different. Um, Also, the level of education. Most of the mothers who came here because they came of a civil war, they were not educated about the culture of the country. They were not educated, academically, they were not educated as well. So they didn't know
mm,
what calculus means. They didn't know what what you call it, biology means or chemistry means. Other than knowing the name, they didn't know how to do. So the kids also drifted away from their parents. There are many factors. The absence of the father figure also sometimes is a case in many
mm,
families. So the point is, right now, the study that I was telling you about, they said the people who live in Islam most are also people were affected by civil war, such as
mm,
number one, Iran, Afghanis, and East Africans who were affected by civil war. Because
mm,
Iran, nobody wants to be a Muslim because of what Khomeini did. Afghani, nobody wants to be a Talibani, for example, and so on. So there's a lot of factors where we need to understand how the youth are evolving and they changing, and not like you and I when we were growing on
mm,
this country.
mm. Do you say it's more of an issue of like the lack of tarbiyah from parents? Is that more of a capability issue or more of an effort issue?
I would say effort. I
Effort.
would
Okay.
say effort because these parents, these people who are, I'm talking about the older generation.
Mm,
Certain community, they live in a certain part of the city, and their income is limited. So a
mm,
father who is not a PhD holder, who does not have engineering degree or medicine, degree, so he have to put more effort, more hours into his work to earn enough
mm,
to just to meet the means. So a lot
mm,
of effort is, I think, if we put effort, then yes, it's not that
mm,
they're capable, but the effort is not there. And culture clash. They didn't know
mm,
should they raise them as Afghani, Somalis, Irani, Pakistani, or should they raise Muslim Canadian. So there was
mm,
also the kid has a different multiple personality. The parents have, the only thing that they know is how to raise him as a Somali or Afghani or Sudani. But that's also misunderstanding of the tarbiyah of this time and this era.
mm. It's so interesting to see how the youth have evolved. As you mentioned before, you would have Somali youth like back in the day. You tell them sit down. They're quietly listening to the sheikh. Like no, um, they're not going to contradict the sheikh or speak out against the sheikh or anything like that. Now
Right,
you have some that as soon as the sheikh starts speaking, if they hear something they don't like, it's like they'll get triggered. Okay, I'm very upset with this, and I'm walking out. They're not going to hear the rest of the lecture, the rest of the khutbah. It's like they're triggered and they want to leave. You know what I mean? Have you
right.
experienced this as well? Like this evolution where they don't want to even, if it's like within a few seconds, if it's something that they don't like, it's they're not willing to give it any time, to listen to it or to open to change their opinion.
Well, why do you think they came up with TikTok? Because
Mm,
you know, these kids nowadays, they want something quick. If I'm not
mm,
connected with you immediately, I'll change. I'll move up, or I'll scroll down, or I'll change the channel. So if the sheikh is saying something that I don't like, I'm out of here. If I don't
mm,
like the way he's speaking, I'm out of here. If I disagree with him, I'm out of here. You know. You see,
mm.
have you ever watched? Do you have kids? Said, I don't know if you have kids or not,
Yeah,
but
I have three kids. Yes, yeah,
how old is the oldest?
10.
Still, still rookie. Okay. Now, when they reach a certain age, they themselves, you have just give them the remote control and see how many channels they will watch or in 10 minutes. They
mm,
can't concentrate. They have to flip the channel, flip, 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 flip,
mm,
and you will go crazy just looking at the TV screen changing. So nowadays, anybody who is talking to the youth, number one, he have to be very concise to the point. The akhlaqiyat,
mm,
the adab, the manners that we used to know. We prayed Salat al-Janaza on them long time ago, without even having a
mm,
wudu. We prayed Janaza on that. But what we need to do is we need to teach them. It's like, if you have a little baby and you're trying to spoon feed the baby, and as soon as you open his mouth, you don't put that piece of meat or whatever food in his mouth, he may just change his mind and walk away. It's the same thing now. Their minds is that it will give you a gap of seconds. If you cannot crack that, if you go through that crack, then they may listen to you for a minute or two or 10 max. And that's why if you see
mm,
right now, commercials they're going to be 6 seconds. 6 seconds.
mm, mm,
Ford would advertise their cars in 6 seconds. Because
mm,
nobody wants to sit there for 10 seconds. So if you want to teach Sharia,
mm,
we got to
mm,
learn how to accommodate these kids and the need of these kids.
mm. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. So, thank you for your time spending with us. There's so many other topic and subjects. Obviously, you have a lot of experience, and alhamdulillah, combined with knowledge, gives us some great insight, community level, da'wah level, and also, maybe planning for a better vision for the future, inshallah. But I think we're going to see some changes. I think there's a lot of positive changes in the horizon, and just for the fact that you're willing to openly speak out and say, "Hey, listen, we need to take a critical look at ourselves, and we need to unite and support one another." I think it's possible. That the first step is that we should make the niyyah and we should talk about it and we should put some efforts towards that. So, jazakallah khair for
I
that.
just I just wanna say, let us not mix quantity with quality.
Mm,
Don't be fooled by same masajid that the people used to come for one Jum'ah, now they have three Jum'ahs. Don't be
mm,
fooled by Musalla al-Eid, that the people used to have one Musalla Eid in the city, now we have five of them. Islam was never about quantity, it was always about quality. In the Battle of Uhud, we were 313 Sahabi. We won.
mm.
In the Battle of Badr, I mean.
Better, better,
In the
better.
Battle of Uhud, we lost. The number was larger. In
Mm,
So it's never quantity. It's about quality. So when
mm,
you look at the horizon, when you look at the people who are coming into even into the field of da'wah, the field of da'wah. Now, when you look back and you look at Abdullah Hakim Kuj, Jazakallah khair for what he did, you look back and you see Siraj Wahaj, mashallah, tabarakallah. You come a little bit and you see, the da'is who came after them. And then now look at where you are right now, today. The people who are leading the social media in
mm,
terms of da'wah, in terms of no, by the way, social media became a member for those who could not find member. So if you have a no member of
yeah,
khutbah, just come to the social media, or just open a Facebook account on your
yeah,
sheikh. You know. Now look at the
yeah.
quality of the newcomers. Look how
Mm,
much knowledge they have. Look how much understanding they have. Look at their willingness of to sit back and learn.
mm,
Where Imam Abu Hanifa and others for 17 years, and one of the Imams, he said, I sat under my Sheikh for 17 years and I have not learned one single word from him,
mm,
because he already learned 17 years ago everything that the Sheikh has, but yet he was sitting. Now I want you to
mm,
reflect on the new patch, newcomers, and then assess the future of Islam and future of Da'wah.
mm,
If the newcomers are people who are rasikhin fil ilm, they have ilm, they have understanding of da'wah, they know ab'ad, the depth of da'wah, they know what we need, they know what direction they should lead. If that is what is coming, then we are in very good hands. But if the newcomers, their concern is how many likes, how many page. I have a Twitter, Twitter account. I have, Instagram account. I have Facebook account. I have, TikTok account. If that is what the dandana is, then we should be concerned. We should worry.
Mm,
So again, do not confuse quality with quantity.
mm,
I know masajid are packed, but after the masjid, after Salat al-Jum'ah, how many people sit for halaqat al-Jum'ah? In
mm,
comparison, I'll tell you, I'll include this. I was raised in mantiqa called um, Khobar, here is in Saudi.
mm,
Next to us was a masjid called Masjid Umar bin Abdul Aziz.
mm,
The Imam and the Khatib of that masjid was Muhammad bin Salih al Munajjid.
mm,
If you want to attend Salat al Jum'ah, you better be there 8 o'clock a.m. Salat al
mm.
Jum'ah.
Subhanallah.
If you want to attend Salat al Taraweeh, you better be ready to be there almost till midnight. Because
Mm,
we finished all of them and he's still reading Surah, first ayat.
mm,
After 10 years, I went back to the same masjid. And by the way, the masjid was massive. And Muhammad bin Salih al Munajjid, he used to sit right underneath the member. And when you go and when you enter the masjid, you will see ocean of qatra, white qatra, dua, pens and paper, writing. 10 years later, I went back to the same masjid. The sheikh moved his table to almost at the door of the masjid, and the
mm,
people who are sitting is not even they're not even 50 people.
mm,
And then I came for Salat al Jum'ah, people sitting outside more than before. So then I realized it's not the Jum'ah that I should count on, is how many students of knowledge I should count on. How many people coming for Salat al
mm,
Fajr I should count on. This is what matters. So
mm.
if you see that in the horizon, we have these young people coming, alhamdulillah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you, and may Allah bless you for having me over. And I would encourage all the brothers, and I have my Facebook account also here. I would encourage all the brothers and sisters to always tune to live Haqq, mashallah, tabarakallah. And may Allah subhanahu wa
Jazakallah
ta'ala
khair.
doing hell, bless you for what you're doing. So thank you very much to all of you.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. And we hope to continue this collaboration. And I think that's what we need to start doing within our ummah is like we need to have people who are willing to put themselves on the line, hold hands with each other, and help bring a better reality that we can all, inshallah ta'ala, benefit from. So, jazakallah khair for your time and your contribution, your wisdom. And we got to do this again. We have to do this again,
Inshallah.
inshallah. So,
Barakallah feek.
uh, all right, Sheikh. So, to our viewers, inshallah, we will have our next podcast Thursday evening. And as always, remember, we want to live by the Haqq, we want to die by the Haqq. And just when you think life is stuck, tune in to Life Haqq. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa
Alaikum salam.
barakatuh.
Do I feel that the New York police are providing enough protection, or do I have to have protection of my own? I look for protection from Allah.